What happens when one of country music's biggest forces walks onto daytime TV's most volatile stage, and in the first 60 seconds, you can already tell something is about to snap? What you're about to witness isn't just an interview derailing. It's a full-blown collision, a raw, unpredictable showdown where every answer hits harder than the last, every question cuts deeper, and the tension builds so fast you can practically feel the studio walls closing in. The tension started the second Jelly Roll sat down. He didn't even open his mouth yet, but Joy Behar was already locked onto him with this sharp, unforgiving stare. And she didn't waste a second throwing the first punch. "Jelly Roll," she said, leaning forward just a little too far. "You've built this whole brand on redemption and second chances. But let me ask you something." She paused, just long enough to make the air feel heavier. "Are you actually trying to help people? Or are you just cashing in on the mistakes you made?" The room tightened instantly. It wasn't the question itself. It was the way she said it. Dry, cold, accusing. Jelly Roll blinked, taken off guard, but he didn't flinch. He sat back in his chair, shoulders steady, voice calm. I appreciate the question, Joy," he said, "but my story isn't some marketing strategy. It's my life. It's the stuff I went through so someone out there doesn't have to." Joy didn't even let him finish before she dropped the real jab. "Right," she shot back with a smirk. "Or maybe you just found a clever way to sell tickets using your old mistakes." The line that crossed into something personal. Jelly let out a slow breath, studying her for a moment. When he finally answered, his tone stayed controlled, but the edge was unmistakable. "If I were trying to scam somebody, Joy," he said, eyes meeting hers, "you wouldn't have been my first choice." Joy's face froze for half a second, just long enough to reveal she didn't expect him to swing back that hard. Her lips pulled into a tight line, irritation flashing across her eyes. Joy straightened her cards, no longer hiding her annoyance. Jelly stayed relaxed. Joy didn't back off after Jelly's first pushback. If anything, it seemed to fuel her. She leaned in even closer, voice sharpening like she was peeling away the last layer of politeness. "You know what your problem is, Jelly," she said. "You've turned your pain into a product. You package it. You print it on shirts. You sell it at arenas. You turned your trauma into merchandise. Just another tour item." The line dropped like a brick on the table. Sunny froze mid-breath, her eyes widening. Alyssa slowly set her pen down, glancing between them like she was watching a fuse burn toward a bomb. Even Whoopi stopped fidgeting with her cards. But Jelly didn't flinch. He stared straight at Joy, calm but razor-sharp. "Let me get this straight," he said. "You think sharing the worst parts of my life makes me some kind of salesman? Like I'm out here handing out coupons for trauma?" Joy didn't respond. She just lifted an eyebrow, challenging him to keep going. And he did. His voice stayed even, but there was a weight behind every word, something colder and more deliberate than anything he'd said before. "Look, Joy, if I had to choose between hiding my mistakes or facing them head-on," he said, "I'd choose the thing you've never done, being honest about myself." Sunny sucked in a breath. Alyssa's eyes snapped toward Joy, bracing for the explosion. Joy's jaw tightened so hard the camera probably picked it up. Her fingers curled around her stack of note cards, knuckles going white. It wasn't just anger anymore. Jel's words hit deeper than the audience could see. For the first time, Joy looked like someone who'd been publicly called out in a way she wasn't prepared for. Not by a politician, not by a celebrity she disliked. The silence hadn't even finished echoing when Joy snapped her head up, eyes blazing. She slammed her note cards on the table. Not hard enough to look unprofessional, but hard enough to say, "I'm done pretending." "Someone like me," she fired back. No, explain that right now, or you can get up and walk out." Her voice wasn't just raised, it was shaking. Anger, pride, and something more tangled underneath it. The table went dead still. Whoopi slowly lowered her chin. Sunny froze mid-blink. Alyssa looked like she was watching a car crash. She couldn't stop. Jelly didn't shift an inch. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and spoke in the softest, coldest tone he'd used all day, slow enough that every word landed like a separate blow. "Someone," he said, "who's gotten so used to judging everybody else that you started calling it accountability." Joy's breath hitched. He went on. "Someone who looks at people through assumptions first, humanity second, and convinces herself it's justice." The words sliced through the air. Joy pushed her chair back so fast it screeched across the floor. She shot to her feet, cheeks blazing red, hands trembling, not with fear, but with fury. "How dare you?" she hissed. "You say that because you're famous, because you've got a guitar and a comeback story.
If you didn't have those things, nobody, and I mean nobody, would have invited you to sit at this table. Jelly looked up at her, steady and unshaken. Joy stood over him, shoulders tight, breathing hard. There was no pretense left, no friendly talk show veneer. Joy was still standing, shoulders stiff, jaw tight, breathing uneven. Jelly Roll stayed seated, hands folded in front of him, watching her with a calm that wasn't smug, just steady, almost unsettlingly steady. And then he tilted his head slightly, voice dropping into something quieter but sharper. "Joy," he said, not challenging, not accusing, just asking, "Is this really about me, or is this about something you haven't dealt with yourself?" Joy froze, not dramatically, not for show, just froze. Her eyes flickered away for the first time since the segment began. She wasn't ready for that angle, and it showed. The silence stretched, not awkward, heavy. Jelly didn't press. He didn't have to. The quiet itself did the work. Finally, Joy exhaled, long and shaky, the fight draining out of her voice. "You want to know the truth?" she murmured, barely above a whisper. "I'm tired. I'm tired of praising people who got lucky." She shook her head, blinking fast. "I'm tired of pretending every redemption story is some kind of proof that the system isn't broken." Jelly stayed quiet, eyes steady, listening instead of fighting. Then she straightened her back, wiped the softness from her face, and pulled the steel back into her voice. "Maybe," she said slowly, staring at the table instead of him. "Maybe I don't want to hear you." The words didn't land like a punch. They landed like a confession she didn't mean to say out loud. Jelly didn't fire back. He didn't shift in his seat. He just sat there, absorbing it. A few seconds passed, long enough that the silence itself felt painful. His jaw tightened, his lips pressed together for a moment, and the slightest twitch at the corner of his mouth. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, but stripped of the usual calm he kept leaning on. "You call me fake," he said quietly, "but you've never actually listened to anything I've said. Not once." He shook his head, eyes still on her. "You listen to argue, Joy, not to understand." Joy's fingers tightened around her cards. She still wouldn't look at him. "You think you got me figured out," Jelly continued, softer now. "But you've been building your version of me from the minute I sat down, and nothing I say, none of it, ever had a chance with you." That one landed. Joy swallowed hard, her eyes drifting off toward anything that wasn't him. The mugs, the edge of the table, a spot on the floor, anywhere else. Jelly watched Joy tighten back into her defensive shell, and something shifted in him. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even frustrated. He just looked tired, tired of trying to prove something to someone who refused to see him. So when he spoke again, his voice was soft, so soft the tension made it sound louder than yelling. "Joy," he said, "you don't hate me. You hate the fact that someone got through something you haven't figured out how to face." Joy's palms slammed down on the table, the crack echoing through the studio. "Stop psychoanalyzing me," she snapped, nearly shouting. "You don't know a single thing about my life." But Jelly didn't back down. He didn't even blink. "Then don't use mine," he said flatly. "Don't take my story and twist it to make your point." Joy stared at him like she'd just been shoved. Her breathing went uneven again, anger rising fast, this time mixed with something messier underneath. Sunny leaned forward, finally breaking her silence with a voice that wasn't gentle at all. It was sharp, direct, and cutting straight through the chaos. "Joy," Sunny said, "just because someone's never forgiven you doesn't mean he doesn't deserve the chance to try." Joy whipped her head towards Sunny so fast it looked like she didn't believe what she'd heard. Her face went blank, true shock replacing the anger for the first time. Not because someone disagreed with her, but because someone she trusted had said the things she didn't expect from anyone at that table. Joy looked like the ground had shifted under her feet. She wasn't angry in that sharp, cutting way anymore. She was angry in the way someone is when everything they've been holding together finally comes apart. Her breathing hitched, her hands trembled, and then just like that, her eyes filled. But when she spoke, her voice was still sharp, still edged, even as a tear slid down her cheek. "I don't even know what I believe anymore," Joy said, her voice cracking but pushing through. "All I know is stories like yours." She jabbed a finger in Jel's direction. "They make people believe this system isn't broken. They give false hope. They make people think anyone can climb out, when the truth is most people never will." Jelly didn't interrupt. He didn't move. He just watched her with a look that wasn't defensive or combative, just steady, deeply steady. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm enough to feel like a final judgment. "If hope is what makes you this angry," he said softly, "then the problem was never me." Joy froze. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. The room went still. Even the air felt like it tightened around their words. Because that line, that single line, hit her harder than anything he had said all day. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. Joy looked down, blinking fast, realizing she had nowhere left to push, nowhere left to aim the fire that had been burning in her for years. And then she did something no one expected. She reached up, unclipped her microphone, and set it gently on the table. The click echoed like a full stop. Before turning to leave, she looked at Jelly, tired, shaken, but brutally honest to the end. "I'm not quitting," she said quietly, voice rough and trembling. "I'm just done fighting the wrong battle." Then she turned away. No final glance, no dramatic pause, no apology or justification. She simply walked off, out of the conversation, out of the moment, out of the storm she helped create. And for the first time all day, the table sat in absolute breathless silence. When the studio doors closed behind Joy, the sound wasn't loud, but for Jelly, it felt like the echo stayed in the room long after she was gone. He stayed seated, elbows on the table, staring at the empty chair across him. The adrenaline had already faded, leaving something softer and heavier